This is One Sentence News, a daily podcast featuring 3 news stories with a sentence-long summary and 1 sentence of context apiece. I'm Colin Wright. This is a sponsored message. I've been using Anchor as my podcast host for a while now, and it's been a pleasure to use. Anchor offers benefits that most other hosts do not. It's free to use, but it also has a collection of tools that allow you to create a podcast completely within the Anchor website or smartphone app. They distribute your show to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other distribution channels without any additional effort on your part, and you can make money from your podcast without any minimum audience size. So you can use it as a more traditional podcast host like I do, but it's also got everything you need to start a podcast from scratch. If you're keen to give it a shot, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's Thursday, November 3rd, 2022. Let's talk about the news. From Reuters, Netanyahu faces balancing act after Israel election comeback. The 5th Israeli election in 4 years has ended, and preliminary vote counts show a dominant lead for former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This is surprising, in part, because Netanyahu was ousted from office following allegations of bribery and corruption, and he's currently on trial for both. And because this time around his victory is partially attributable to surging support for Israel's far-right, ultra-nationalist, religious Zionism party, with which he formed an alliance of convenience, and which is co-led by a man who was previously convicted of racist incitement against Arabs, and who has recently advocated for expelling all Palestinians from Israel, a man Netanyahu will have to place somewhere high up in the country's government. From Axios, huge planet-killer asteroid found in the glare of the sun. An asteroid just shy of a mile long, designated 2022 AP7, has been identified inside the orbits of Earth and Venus, previously untracked because of the glare from the sun. This asteroid is big enough to make a huge swath of Earth uninhabitable for a very long time if it ever collided with us, so it's fortunate that it poses no immediate threat. Though because its orbit crosses ours, we'll need to keep an eye on it, just in case a nudge of some kind, similar to the one performed during NASA's DART mission, ever becomes necessary to avoid catastrophe. Though based on its orbit, that wouldn't be for a few thousand years at the earliest. And from the New York Times, stocks end sharply lower as the Fed leaves investors wondering what will happen next. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell closed this month's Fed meeting with statements about future interest rate hikes that some analysts have called cryptic, but which seem to suggest this month's interest rate increase of 0.75 percentage point could be the last of that size for the time being. U.S. stocks dropped shortly after the meeting ended, possibly because Powell also suggested that rates could continue even higher than the highs previously predicted, and that although the next hike could be smaller, there could be several more of them, rather than one more big hike followed by a plateau or interest rate decrease. What happens in the U.S. economy tends to reverberate outward into the global economy, so one of the implications of Powell suggesting that a soft landing, where inflation rates drop without pulling the U.S. economy into a recession, is no longer terribly likely, is that the global economy may face the same unfortunate forecast as well. If you're finding some value in One Sentence News, consider leaving a quick review wherever you get your podcasts and/or sharing the show with a friend. You can find out more about this show or subscribe to the email version at onesentencenews.com, and you can support this and other related projects like the Let's Know Things and Brain Lenses podcasts at understandery.com.